"Will you stay if we take off our clothes?" Identical Chinese triplets asked after rancher saved them in the lake. Birds chirped cheerfully in the distance, and the sound of water lapping against the shore of a nearby lake added a sense of calm to the day. It was a perfect day for being outside, a day that seemed ordinary and peaceful, but ordinary days often held the most unexpected stories. Not far from the lake, a rancher named Li Wei was beginning his morning routine. Li Wei was a man in his mid-40s, with strong, sun-tanned hands that had worked the land for many years. His face was lined with years of effort under the sun, yet his eyes were gentle, reflecting a kindness that people in his small village had come to trust. Every morning, Li Wei would walk along the edges of his property, checking on his cattle and making sure the fences were secure. He liked to greet the day slowly, taking in the beauty of nature around him. The ranch had been in his family for generations, and he had grown up learning the importance of patience, hard work, and looking out for others. On that same morning, a small family from a nearby city was visiting the countryside. The family consisted of a mother, father, and their 3 daughters, identical triplets named Mei, Lin, and Jia. The girls were 10 years old, full of energy, curiosity, and an adventurous spirit that often got them into small troubles. Their laughter was like music, light and free, echoing across the open fields as they ran ahead of their parents, eager to explore every corner of the countryside. The mother called after them, warning them not to go too close to the lake, but the girls barely noticed. Their attention was caught by the sparkle of sunlight on the water and the tiny fish swimming near the surface. The lake itself was beautiful, calm, and inviting. Its clear water reflected the sky, making it look like a giant mirror. The edges of the lake were lined with smooth stones, and a few reeds swayed gently in the breeze. Children, especially those from the city, were often fascinated by such natural wonders. They had not grown up with open fields and lakes like this. To them, every ripple in the water, every bird in the sky, and every flower by the shore was a source of excitement. Mei, the boldest of the triplets, pointed to a small floating branch near the center of the lake. "Look, let's see if we can reach it," she said, her eyes shining with determination. Lin and Jia, ever the companions, nodded eagerly. They imagined themselves as brave explorers on an adventure, conquering the lake as if it were uncharted territory. As the girls approached the water, their laughter and chatter filled the air. They skipped over the stones and peered into the clear water, fascinated by the tiny fish darting about. Each step they took brought them closer to the edge, unaware of the potential danger. Their mother's voice, though not far away, seemed distant to them, drowned out by their excitement. This is often how children are in moments of pure curiosity. They are fearless, confident, and yet completely unaware of the risks around them. Li Wei, meanwhile, had noticed the girls from a distance. He was used to seeing children play near the lake, but something about the way these girls moved made him pay closer attention. Perhaps it was the way Mei leaned too far over the water, trying to touch the branch without thinking about her footing. Or maybe it was the sheer energy of all 3 girls clustering together at the edge. He narrowed his eyes slightly, sensing that the playful adventure could quickly turn into trouble. His instincts, honed from years of working the land and dealing with unexpected situations, told him to be alert. The triplets continued to inch closer to the water. Mei, standing a little ahead of her sisters, reached out toward the floating branch, stretching her arms. Lin and Jia followed, giggling and teasing each other, unaware that the stones beneath their feet were uneven and slippery. A small stone shifted under Mei's weight, and suddenly she stumbled forward, her arms flailing as she tried to catch herself. The sound of a splash filled the air as she fell into the lake, the cold water immediately engulfing her. Lin and Jia screamed in surprise, but before they could react, the current pulled them both in as well. What had started as innocent play had turned into a dangerous situation. The girls thrashed in the water, panic overtaking their curiosity. Their small voices carried across the lake, calling for help, as fear replaced laughter in an instant. The sun reflected off the water, making it difficult to see exactly what was happening, but Li Wei didn't hesitate. Without a second thought, Li Wei dropped the rope he had been carrying for feeding his cattle and ran toward the lake. His heart pounded, and every step was measured but fast. He knew that in situations like this, every second counted. The water was cold and the girls were small and inexperienced swimmers. Li Wei's mind raced as he assessed the scene, but his body moved on instinct, trained by years of hard work and responsibility. He reached the edge of the lake and immediately saw the three girls struggling, their arms flailing and faces marked by fear. Li Wei did not panic. Instead, he quickly tied the rope around his waist and waded into the water. The lake was deeper than he expected, and the girls were being pulled slightly away from the shore by a subtle current. He reached Mei first, grabbing her under her arms and holding her tightly against his chest. She coughed and spluttered, frightened, but safe in his strong grasp. Then he turned to Lin and Jia, carefully swimming to each and pulling them in succession toward the shore. Finally, all three girls were on solid ground, shaking and gasping for breath. Li Wei knelt beside them, wrapping his jacket around their trembling bodies. He spoke to them in calm, reassuring tones, telling them that they were safe now. His presence, steady and kind, began to soothe their fear. Gradually, their tears turned into sniffles, and their wide-eyed panic gave way to relief. The girls' parents arrived a few moments later, rushing to the edge of the lake, their faces pale with fear. They embraced their daughters tightly, whispering words of comfort and gratitude. The parents' relief was palpable, and they turned to Li Wei with tearful eyes, thanking him repeatedly for his quick thinking and bravery. Li Wei simply nodded, brushing off their thanks modestly. For him, helping those in need was just part of life, a natural extension of the values he had learned from his family and community. As the morning continued, the girls huddled together under Li Wei's jacket, still shivering from the cold water. Their curiosity had been replaced by awe and gratitude. They kept looking at Li Wei, their young minds trying to understand how a stranger could appear at exactly the right moment to save them. In their innocence, they didn't yet grasp the seriousness of what had happened. They only knew that a kind man had saved them from danger. The lake, which had seemed so inviting just moments before, now looked like a vast, mysterious place full of potential hazards. The triplets learned a lesson about curiosity, caution, and the importance of listening to warnings. But more than that, they learned about trust and kindness, embodied in the figure of the rancher who had risked his own safety to help them. Li Wei, meanwhile, returned to his routine, quietly satisfied that he had done the right thing. He knew that heroism did not need recognition or applause. It was about acting when it mattered most. The morning sun climbed higher in the sky, casting a warm glow across the ranch and the lake. Birds continued to sing, and the gentle breeze rustled the leaves. Life in the countryside went on, but for Li Wei and the triplets, this day would remain unforgettable. It was a day that started like any other but ended with a story of courage, innocence, and human connection. An ordinary day turned extraordinary by an unexpected act of bravery and care. The triplets, still holding onto each other, whispered among themselves, their voices soft but full of admiration. They had witnessed firsthand the power of kindness and courage, and though they didn't fully understand it yet, they would carry the memory of this day with them for years to come. Li Wei watched them with a quiet smile, knowing that in some small way he had made a difference in their lives. The calm of the lake, the gentle countryside, and the warmth of human compassion had all come together to create a moment that was simple, yet profound. And so, the day continued, bright, peaceful, and full of life, while an ordinary rancher and three adventurous triplets became connected by a remarkable story that would stay in their hearts forever. The moment the rancher, Li Wei, had pulled the three triplets from the lake, a wave of relief washed over him. Yet even as their parents embraced them, he could see that the girls were still trembling, both from fear and the shock of the water. Water, even shallow water, could be surprisingly dangerous for children, and Li Wei knew that the panic they had experienced was not something they would forget easily. He knelt beside them, gently patting their backs and speaking softly, trying to calm their racing hearts. The triplets, Mei, Lin, and Jia, clung tightly to each other. Their small bodies shook uncontrollably, and they continued to cough from the water they had swallowed. "It was so scary," Mei whispered, her voice quivering. "I thought I was going to. I don't even know." Lin and Jia nodded, unable to form complete sentences. Their minds were still processing the sudden danger, and it showed in their wide eyes, still fixed on Li Wei as if he were a guardian angel who had appeared out of nowhere. Li Wei looked at the water, noticing how easily the girls had been pulled by the current. Though it had been shallow, the current had been just strong enough to make swimming difficult for such small children. He realized that even the most ordinary lake could hide risks that children might not notice. He turned his attention back to the girls and their parents, offering a calm but firm voice to help everyone regain a sense of safety. "You're safe now," he said, smiling gently. "The water can be tricky, but as long as you stay near the shore and hold on to each other, you'll be okay. You have to be careful, all right." The girls nodded, their faces still pale, but their trust in Li Wei was clear. They felt safe because he had acted so quickly and with such confidence. The parents were grateful, their eyes brimming with tears. "Thank you, Li Wei," the mother said, her voice trembling. "We don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been here." Her husband placed a hand on Li Wei's shoulder, squeezing it in gratitude. "You saved our daughters' lives today. We are forever thankful." Li Wei simply nodded, brushing aside the praise. He didn't consider himself a hero. He had just done what anyone in his place should do. After a few moments, the triplets began to calm down slightly. Mei wiped her wet hair from her eyes and looked at Li Wei with curiosity. "How did you know we were in trouble?" she asked. Lin and Jia echoed the question with quiet nods. Li Wei chuckled softly. "I saw you from my ranch," he explained. "I knew you were too close to the water and I ran as fast as I could. When I saw you falling, I jumped in immediately. It was important to act fast, or things could have been worse." In their young minds, Li Wei seemed almost like a superhero, someone who could appear just when needed. It was a lesson they would carry with them forever, that sometimes help comes from people you least expect, and courage doesn't always wear a cape. Li Wei suggested they all sit on a dry patch of grass near the lake. He wrapped the girls in warm blankets that their parents had brought, rubbing their arms gently to restore warmth. Their teeth still chattered slightly, but they began to feel safe again. He made small talk, asking them about school and what games they liked to play. Slowly, the atmosphere started to shift from fear to relief, and even laughter returned in small bursts. However, Li Wei knew the rescue was not over in his mind. He observed the lake carefully. Though it looked calm now, he could see how easily the girls had been swept by the current. He wanted the parents to understand the importance of keeping a watchful eye, even when the water seemed harmless. "The lake looks calm," he said, "but it can be dangerous. Children should never play near the water alone, and adults should always be nearby. Today, you were lucky." Though they didn't fully understand danger yet, they felt the seriousness of the situation. After a few minutes, Mei's curiosity began to return. "Can we play near the water again?" she asked cautiously. Li Wei smiled gently, shaking his head. "Not today. Today, you need to rest and warm up. Tomorrow, maybe, but always with an adult nearby." Safety comes first, curiosity second. Lin and Jia nodded, understanding, though their adventurous spirit was still strong. As the sun climbed higher, the warmth began to seep through the girls' damp clothes. They began to dry off, and their shivering lessened. Their parents offered warm drinks and snacks, which the girls accepted eagerly. The small comfort helped restore their spirits, and soon, their laughter began to return, though more subdued than before. Li Wei stayed nearby, watching to make sure they were completely safe. He knew that moments like these could have lasting effects, both in teaching caution and in inspiring gratitude. The story of that morning was already forming in everyone's minds. For the parents, it was a reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of vigilance. For the triplets, it was a moment of wonder, confusion, and awe. They couldn't quite understand how the situation had turned from a simple game into a life-threatening experience, and then back to safety so quickly. But they understood that Li Wei had been the difference between danger and safety. Li Wei also thought about the lessons the day had taught him. He realized how quickly life could change and how important it was to remain calm in emergencies. Panic could make things worse, but quick thinking, courage, and careful action could prevent tragedy. These lessons were not only for the triplets or their parents, they were reminders for himself as well. As the morning passed, the family decided it was time to leave the lake and head back to their temporary home in the countryside. The girls reluctantly let go of the grass and water, still looking back at the lake with a mixture of fear and fascination. Li Wei walked with them for a while, guiding them back safely to the path. He gave gentle instructions: walk slowly, hold hands, and stay close to your parents. The girls followed, taking every word seriously now. Along the way, the triplets began to ask questions about the lake, the water, and even about Li Wei himself. How long have you lived here? Jia asked. Have you saved anyone before? Lin added. Li Wei chuckled, enjoying their curiosity. I've lived here all my life, he said. And yes, I've helped people before, though nothing quite like today. You three were very lucky that morning. That was enough for him. He knew that actions mattered more than words, and today his actions had truly made a difference. As they reached the family's home, the sun was shining brightly, and the warmth of the day had fully returned. The girls were still processing everything that had happened, but they were beginning to relax, realizing that the danger had passed. They shared stories among themselves, giggling nervously as they recounted the moments in the lake. Each story contained exaggerations and embellishments, as children often do, but at the heart of each tale was the truth, that Li Wei had saved them. The day continued with small acts of care. The girls were given dry clothes, warm food, and plenty of water. Their parents kept a watchful eye, ensuring they would not be tempted to return to the lake immediately. Li Wei stayed nearby for a while, helping to settle the family and offering guidance on safety around water. Eventually, he returned to his ranch, quietly satisfied with the morning's events. Even after leaving, Li Wei could not help but think about the triplets and the lake. He reflected on how easily accidents could happen and how crucial it was to respond quickly when they did. He also thought about the innocence of the children, their curiosity, and the trust they had placed in him without fully understanding the situation. It was a reminder that life often required courage, compassion, and attention, especially when others depended on you. By the time the sun reached its peak, the lake had returned to its calm state. The reeds swayed gently, the water reflected the sky, and life in the countryside continued as usual. But for Li Wei and the triplets, the morning had been unforgettable. It was a day that started like any other but had transformed into a story of bravery, trust, and human connection. The lessons learned would stay with everyone involved, shaping their understanding of safety, responsibility, and the power of a helping hand. And as the family settled in, still recounting the day's events, the bond formed that morning, between a simple rancher and three adventurous triplets, remained unspoken but deeply felt. It was a bond built on courage, trust, and the realization that even ordinary people could perform extraordinary acts when the situation demanded it. By the time the afternoon sun began to warm the countryside, the immediate danger of the lake had passed, and a calm sense of relief settled over the triplets and their parents. The three girls, Mei, Lin, and Jia, sat together on a blanket outside their temporary home, wrapped in warm towels and sipping on hot sweet tea their mother had prepared. Their small hands clutched the cups tightly, still trembling slightly from the morning's ordeal. They were safe now, yet their minds could not fully comprehend everything that had happened. Li Wei, the rancher who had rescued them, remained nearby. He had insisted on staying for a little while to ensure the girls were completely calm and safe. His presence was comforting, a steady reminder that the chaos of the lake had truly ended. He sat quietly on a small wooden bench, watching the girls with a mixture of patience and understanding. While he did not speak much, his calm demeanor reassured the children and their parents alike. The triplets' curiosity, however, had not disappeared. As they sipped their tea and began to warm up, they started asking questions. May, always the boldest of the three, looked directly at Li Wei. "Why did you save us?" she asked. Her voice was soft but filled with genuine wonder. Lin and Jia nodded in agreement, their eyes wide with curiosity. "We didn't even know who you were," Lin added. Li Wei smiled gently, understanding that the girls were trying to make sense of the bravery they had witnessed. "I saw you in danger," he explained calmly. "Anyone in that situation would want to help. It's important to act quickly when someone needs help. Today, I was able to reach you in time, and that made all the difference." Yet even in their innocence, they could sense that something extraordinary had happened that morning. As they began to relax, May leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. "Li Wei," she asked, "did you get scared?" The question surprised him. Adults often think of bravery as the absence of fear, but in truth, courage is acting despite fear. He considered how to explain this to a 10-year-old in a way she could understand. "Yes," he said slowly. "I was nervous because I didn't want anything to happen to you. But when someone is in danger, it's important to focus on what needs to be done instead of letting fear stop you." Their eyes followed Li Wei as he spoke, noticing the way his strong hands rested calmly in his lap and the way his voice remained steady. It was difficult for children to imagine staying calm in such a dangerous situation, yet Li Wei had done so effortlessly. This realization deepened their respect for him. It was at this moment, in the midst of their curiosity and relief, that the triplets asked a question that would make Li Wei pause. Jia, the quietest of the three, spoke first. "Li Wei," she said cautiously, "will you stay if we take off our clothes?" But he quickly realized that it was not meant to be inappropriate in any way. Children often speak bluntly, and without understanding the social boundaries that adults take for granted. To the girls, the question was a mix of innocence and curiosity, a way of testing whether someone they trusted would remain with them, even in a situation where they felt vulnerable. He took a deep breath and smiled gently, kneeling down to their level so they could see that he meant no harm. "You don't need to take off your clothes," he said softly. "I am here to make sure you're safe. You don't have to do anything to earn my help or my presence. I will stay because you are safe and I care about your well-being." May tilted her head thoughtfully. "So you'll stay even if we're scared?" she asked. Lin and Jia nodded, their expressions showing relief. Li Wei chuckled softly. "Yes," he said, "I will stay. Being scared is normal and it's okay to feel that way. My job is to help you when you are scared, not to ask you to do anything else." It was a reminder of how children perceive trust and protection differently than adults do. After a few moments of silence, May whispered, "We didn't mean anything bad. We just wanted to see if someone would stay with us." Li Wei smiled again, his heart warming at their honesty. "I understand," he said. "And now you know. You don't have to do anything unusual to have someone stay with you. If you are in trouble or scared, people who care will help you, no matter what." They had experienced fear, relief, and gratitude all in one morning, and now they were learning a subtle but important lesson about trust and boundaries. Their parents, who had been watching quietly, seemed relieved that Li Wei had handled the situation so gracefully. They realized how easily misunderstandings could occur between children and adults, and they were grateful for his patience and wisdom. The mother spoke softly to the girls, explaining again the importance of listening to adults and being careful near water. The father emphasized that bravery was not about being fearless, but about being careful and thinking clearly in difficult situations. The afternoon passed with a gentle rhythm. The triplets played quietly on the blanket, occasionally glancing at Li Wei, while their parents tended to small chores around the house. The girls were still curious about everything that had happened, asking questions about the lake, the water, and the rescue itself. Li Wei answered each question patiently, explaining what had happened in simple terms they could understand. He described how he had seen them in trouble, why he had acted quickly, and how he had pulled each of them safely to shore. The girls listened intently, their imaginations painting pictures of the rescue in their minds. May, who loved adventure stories, asked if the lake was dangerous all the time. Li Wei explained that the lake was usually calm, but even calm water could be risky if children were not careful. Lin asked how Li Wei had known what to do, and he explained that sometimes experience, careful observation, and staying calm are the most important tools anyone can have. Jia, still thoughtful, finally spoke up. "I think we understand now," she said quietly. "You helped us because you wanted to, not because we did anything special, and you stayed with us because we needed help, not because of what we said." Li Wei smiled, proud that the girls were beginning to understand such an important lesson. "Exactly," he said. "That's exactly right. Helping others is about caring, not expecting anything in return." The triplets had learned lessons about water safety, courage, and trust, but more than that, they had witnessed the quiet strength of a man who acted selflessly when it mattered most. Li Wei, for his part, had reinforced the idea that true heroism often comes without recognition, applause, or reward. It comes simply from doing what is right. As the evening approached, the family prepared to have dinner. The girls, still holding onto the memory of the morning's events, chattered nervously about the lake, the rescue, and Li Wei's bravery. They asked if they could draw pictures of the lake and the rescue, and their mother happily agreed. May decided to draw Li Wei pulling her from the water. Lin focused on the moment they were all together on the blanket afterward, and Jia drew the lake itself, calm and sparkling in the sunlight. Li Wei watched them with a gentle smile. He knew these pictures would be cherished by the girls, a reminder of both a frightening and meaningful experience. It was a story that would stay with them for years, teaching lessons about courage, trust, and human kindness. As night fell, the family gathered for dinner, and the triplets snuggled close to their parents, exhausted from the excitement and emotional intensity of the day. Li Wei quietly returned to his ranch, satisfied that the girls were safe and that he had helped instill important lessons about bravery and care. The stars twinkled overhead, and the countryside was quiet once more, the lake reflecting the soft light of the moon. It had been a day of fear, curiosity, and understanding. The triplets had asked a question that at first seemed startling, but it revealed their innocence and need for reassurance. Li Wei had answered with patience, wisdom, and kindness, teaching them about trust, safety, and the importance of helping others. The memory of that afternoon would remain vivid in their minds forever, a lesson in humanity wrapped in the simplicity of a single day in the countryside. And so, as the night settled in, the story of the rescue, the surprising question, and the gentle guidance of a courageous rancher became a memory the triplets would carry with them, a story of safety, trust, and kindness that would shape the way they understood the world. The day slowly faded into evening, and the countryside was bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. The air was calm, carrying the faint scent of grass and flowers, while birds returned to their nests and the lake's water mirrored the colors of the sky. For Li Wei, the rancher who had spent the morning saving the three triplets, it was a moment to reflect. Although the immediate danger was over, the events of the day left a lasting impression on everyone involved. The triplets, May, Lin, and Jia, were sitting quietly near their parents, wrapped in blankets, their eyes wide with thought. They were still trying to process everything that had happened that morning, the excitement of playing by the lake, the sudden fear of falling in, and the calm bravery of Li Wei as he pulled them to safety. Children often experience events in moments, flashes of memory and feeling, but this day would linger in their minds, shaping their understanding of courage and trust for years to come. Their parents were also reflective. The mother brushed a strand of hair from May's forehead, thinking about how close her daughters had come to danger. The father sat silently, considering how quickly things could have turned tragic. Both were deeply grateful to Li Wei, not only for his bravery but for the way he had handled the situation with patience and care. They realized that acts of heroism were sometimes quiet, unassuming, and profoundly impactful. Li Wei had returned to the family briefly after cleaning up at his ranch, but he remained near enough that the triplets could still see him. The girls' curiosity had not diminished. May, who had always been the most inquisitive, asked softly, "Li Wei, do you think accidents happen to everyone?" Li Wei smiled, kneeling to meet her gaze. "Accidents can happen to anyone," he said, "but the important thing is to be careful and to learn from them. Today you learned about water and about staying close to people who can help you. That knowledge will help you in the future. We learned that people can be kind and brave even if we don't expect it." Li Wei's eyes softened. "Exactly," he said. "Sometimes bravery and kindness appear when you need them most, and sometimes they appear in people you might not even know well." They had experienced fear, relief, and curiosity all in one morning, and now they were learning about trust, human nature, and compassion. It was a lot for them to grasp, but children are surprisingly perceptive when lessons are tied to real experiences. Li Wei's calm presence helped make those lessons tangible. As the evening wore on, the triplets began to share their feelings about the day. "I was so scared," Gia admitted softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I might never get out of the water." May and Lin nodded, each remembering the panic, the cold water, and the sense of helplessness. Li Wei listened carefully, offering comfort without judgment. "It's normal to be scared," he said. "Even adults are scared sometimes. Being brave doesn't mean not feeling fear. It means acting despite the fear." Their parents watched in quiet admiration as the girls processed their emotions. The mother held Lin's hand, squeezing it gently. "You see," she said, "Li Wei helped you, but he also taught you something important. Courage isn't about never being afraid, it's about knowing what to do when you are." The father added, "And kindness too. Someone helped you because they cared, not because they expected anything in return." As night fell, the family lit a small fire outside their home, the flames flickering gently in the darkness. The girls sat close to the fire, the warmth comforting their still shivering bodies. Li Wei stayed nearby, speaking quietly about the countryside, the animals, and the land he had tended for so many years. His stories were simple, yet filled with wisdom and calm reassurance. The triplets listened intently, absorbing his words and the sense of stability he projected. They asked about his life, about the ranch, and about the animals he cared for. Li Wei answered patiently, explaining the routines of a rancher, the responsibilities he carried, and the lessons he had learned from life in the countryside. The girls were fascinated, seeing a different way of life from their own city upbringing. They realized that bravery and kindness were not just about heroic moments, but about daily acts of responsibility and care. At one point, May asked, "Do you think we will always remember today?" Li Wei nodded gently. "Yes," he said. "Moments like this stay with you because they teach you important lessons. You'll remember the fear, yes, but you'll also remember the help, the kindness, and the bravery. That's what matters most." The lessons of the lake would not be forgotten. They would shape the way they approached danger, trust, and empathy for the rest of their lives. The parents, watching this interaction, felt a sense of peace. They had worried all morning about their daughters, but now they could see that the experience had not only been survived, but transformed into a meaningful lesson. It was a reminder that even frightening moments could result in growth, understanding, and gratitude. As the stars appeared in the night sky, Li Wei prepared to leave. The girls ran to him, hugging him tightly. "Thank you," May whispered. Lin and Gia added their thanks, their voices full of sincerity. Li Wei smiled warmly, patting each girl on the head. "You don't have to thank me," he said. I did what anyone would do. Remember to be careful, be brave, and be kind. That's the most important thing." Though the day had been extraordinary, he returned to his work with a sense of normalcy, knowing that true heroism often occurs quietly, without fanfare. That night, the triplets lay in bed, recounting the day's events in whispers. They spoke of the lake, the fear, the rescue, and Li Wei's calm presence. Each detail was vivid in their minds, from the cold water to the warmth of his blankets and the reassuring tone of his voice. They laughed quietly at their own questions and misunderstandings, realizing how innocent and curious they had been. And through it all, they carried a sense of admiration and trust for the man who had saved them. In the days that followed, the triplets continued to speak of Li Wei's bravery. They drew pictures of the lake, the rescue, and the moments afterward, sharing the story with their parents and neighbors. The story spread quietly, not as a sensational tale, but as an example of courage, kindness, and calm action in the face of danger. People who heard it were inspired, seeing how a single act of bravery could impact the lives of children and leave a lasting impression. Li Wei, meanwhile, returned to his routine at the ranch. He tended to his animals, checked the fences, and performed the small daily tasks that defined his life. But in quiet moments, he would think of the triplets, remembering their innocence, curiosity, and the way they had tested him with their surprising question. He realized that heroism was not only in the act of saving lives, but also in guiding, comforting, and teaching those who depended on you. The triplets, too, carried the lessons of that day forward. They became more careful around water, more thoughtful in their play, and more aware of the people around them who could offer help. They had learned about fear, courage, kindness, and trust, all through one extraordinary morning. And though they would grow up and experience many other moments in life, the memory of Li Wei and the lake would remain a touchstone, a story of bravery and human connection that they could always return to. As the countryside settled into the quiet of night, with the lake reflecting the moonlight and the stars twinkling above, the story of that day reached a peaceful conclusion. A simple rancher had acted with courage and kindness. 3 curious triplets had experienced fear and relief, and a family had been reminded of the fragile beauty of life. It was a story that would live on, not in headlines or fame, but in the hearts of those who had witnessed it and learned from it. And so, the day ended quietly, leaving behind memories, lessons, and a lasting sense of human connection. The triplets would remember Li Wei not just as the man who saved them, but as a figure of trust, bravery, and care. Li Wei would remember the triplets as a reminder of why courage and kindness matter, and why even the simplest acts can create stories worth remembering.